Greetings, it is I, Countess Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on anime series where I've reviewed them, let you know some information about them, and then give you some information on how you can adapt them to your big eyes, small mouth games, your BESM games. And as I'll always note, you could always adapt them to another role-playing game system if you want to take the time. So let's dive into it. I've got two more from 2014, and then I've got basically two past inspirations I wanted to talk about that came to mind this week. So let's dive into the two from 2014. I've got Tokyo ESP and Rokujoma no Shinryakusha. But let's start with Tokyo ESP. So we focus on Rinka. Rinka's basically an ordinary high school student. She's kind of poor. Her father was an officer. And the fact is she works part-time at a little convenience store. So one night, she sees a penguin flying about, chasing a glowing fish. Now, she would pass this off as something she imagined or something she hallucinated, except someone else sees it too. Then, eventually though, she encounters one of these strange fish and it basically passes through her. Next day, she finds out that she has the ability to phase through, to pass through non-living matter. She basically has gained some kind of supernatural power. She eventually encounters this other boy who is someone from her class that can teleport. She learns off that there are ESP powers, basically psychic powers. And the two of them decide to do good, to stop those that would do bad with the ESP powers, and eventually deal with other organizations that have to do with it. The fact that people begin to find out about them and basically mistreating people with ESP, and a lot of other problems that occur over the course of the series that deal with the fact that they have developed the powers, and many folks that develop these powers do not use them for good, or with a good intention in mind. Now, this is, of course, an action series. They have big battle scenes with their special powers. It's a sci-fi. They have psychic powers. Psychic powers, as strange and mystical as they used to be, usually tend towards the sci-fi realm, that it's basically special powers developed through brain power. It's also a comedy. A lot of funny little things happen that are very entertaining along the way that make you just chuckle. I rate this one a 5. I loved the manga. And when the anime series came out, I was ecstatic. This one was a great one that I did enjoy a lot, and I could highly recommend. Now, of course, if you're using a BESM game, I recommend 400 points. You're going to make your characters a group of folks with ESP that have decided to basically do good. They've decided to oppose those that would use their ESP powers for bad things, and eventually you might deal with some of those dark organizations, like those that are trying to manipulate those and basically unite those with ESP to be superior to people. There's seemingly a theme about that when it comes to ESP. Those that feel that they're superior to them also deal with the fact that the government might not like the people with ESP, that they're unique in causing problems, and do things with them. Basically, maybe shut them off from the rest of society or control them, and the problems within society itself, and gaining some kind of level of recognition and acceptance. All of these levels of it that exist within the characters, and your character should deal with. They should deal with this. Both the enemies from within the society they're attempting to protect, and the enemies basically from the ESP people, how they're going to go against them. So not only just the problem people of the week, but the overall society problems that are probably going to come out of ESP existing. And maybe even some of the dark ramifications of what's going on and creating these ESP people, the glowing fish and things like that exist. Some of those things you might want to bring in also. But let's move on and talk about Rokujouma no Shinryakusha, or Invaders of Rokujoma. So we focus on Kotaro, who's just a high school boy who decides that when he goes into high school, he's going to live on his own. So he basically rents an apartment. Now, the odd thing is that his apartment apparently is the nexus of, like, strange beings from other worlds and supernatural beings that all want control of it. There's just something about this one room in this one apartment which makes it critically important to all these different groups from various strange outsider areas, otherworldly areas, or supernatural sources that they all want it under their control and want to basically conquer this room So they start dealing with each other, while also then Kotaro here in the middle, basically having them live there and maintaining some level of peace and control over the place because it's technically his room that they're all trying to steal. And so the entire series ensues from this strange and weird concept. And all these girls who are trying to determine who ends up with the room have to deal with him too, trying to maintain order along the way. So, of course, from the sounds of it, since they are all female, it's a harem. There you go. It's a harem that's not very harem-y because, his relationship with all of them is more friendly than romantic, sort of. But the fact is that there are a bunch of women trying to conquer it, and the fact that he tries to maintain the fact of it, that it's his, is the big crux of the series, which leads into the other genres. A little bit of romantic comedy. He develops relationships with all of them along the way. So, of course, there we're hitting the romantic comedy aspect. And developing these relationships is where we're getting into the harem element, of course, because if you have a relationship with a whole bunch of women, there's your harem. But again, it's a light relationship because it is sort of developing it amongst them. Then it's supernatural after that, because they have all kinds of strange sources and abilities and powers that they're bringing into the entire mix of the single room that they're all trying to conquer. Now, I rate this one a 4. I didn't mind, once again. Not a big fan of the harem elements, but it did work very well here. Just the fact that they are in this sort of group together, living all together in this one room. The comedy aspects of it were great. And, the fact that they're all very unique, strange people with strange abilities that are all trying to take over a single room is just a weird concept. But it's a concept that, hey, I thought it worked pretty well. Comically, at least. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I recommend 450 points. And guess what? You're going to have an NPC having their own room, and your characters are the invaders. So, there you go. Keep it simple like that. The harem element, you can bring in it as much or as little as you want. You do not have to have your characters all female. You don't have to have them in a relationship in some mannerism with the NPC. You could all just have them end up living in this space because all of them are attempting to conquer this space. And basically your NPCs maintaining the peace as they effectively each try to get a foothold and control of this room while maybe making deals with each other in order to come up with plans in order to effectively conquer the room. It's all about each character basically taking control of the room for the own reasons that they're going to come up with, from as crazy or simple as it is. Whatever reason that you want to conquer the room, go ahead and figure it out. It's completely up to your players how they really want to figure that one out there. Why they want to take over this one room, but bam, they could. And then basically it's all about doing that for your characters, for each of them competing to do that. And the fact is, you should use the NPC and situations to make them fail miserably every time. They shouldn't succeed. It's not succeeding that's going to be the important part. Their characters will want to succeed, but it's the journey and the failure which is going to add to the fun of the adventure. Of course, you will want to balance out some of the relationship, even if it's not a more romantic relationship, at least a relationship with the NPC and to each other, and to getting along, well, to a little bit degree, the real life of the room and those living in it. Now let's move on to the two I wanted to bring in from the past. Let's start with Zettai Karen Children. Now this one is also a long-running manga series, but the anime did a good number of episodes, basically the first major arc of the manga. I'm just noting it. There's 3 arcs, which I'll explain in a minute because that is important. But anyway, we're set in the near future. This is going to be a little theme here too, because I got inspired by Tokyo ESP. People with ESP, basically Esper powers, begin to become the norm. Well, more and more people are being born with it. It's becoming an increased thing. And in this new future, though, there are those that use them for the good of society and those that use them for bad. Japan organizes a group called Babel. They're basically a unit that employs a number of special espers used to take care of problems within the Japan itself that normal people couldn't take care of, and oftentimes this relates to espers that are causing crime. We focus on Minamoto, who is basically a prodigy. He's now in his 20s. He was a child prodigy, a genius, went to college already. He's working for Babel, and he's been put in charge of supervising a group of the most powerful espers in all of Japan. these 3 10-year-old girls known as the children. So there's the situation. We have the children, these 3 10-year-olds who are super powerful, working for Babel, but they're still 10-year-olds. Now, the storyline goes throughout them as their young 10-year-old selves, focuses them on then in junior high, and the current storyline has them in high school. So you can see there are time jumps in between all of them as they progress in age throughout the storyline. Basically, the anime focused on their time as the 10-year-olds and hinted at them doing the time skip. And we haven't seen any more anime for any of these other time periods as the manga keeps going. But let's continue along with the genres. It's an action. They do get into big Esper battle scenes with people. Sometimes they're quick, sometimes they're long, but the fact is it's also very good comedy. They oftentimes use their powers for more comical things. They are 10-year-olds, and a lot of comedic situations occur. Their relationship with Minamoto develops over it, that he is a guardian figure to them, in a way a father figure, and, that development of the relationship over the years with him is an important aspect of it. But a lot of comedic situations do result from their interaction with him. Now, it's also a sci-fi. It's set in a near future where Esper powers are all around, and there's a lot of technology and abilities based around it. It's a world based around it. Now, I rate this one a 5. I like this one a lot also. This one is a really great one. It has very interesting story, good comedy, interesting characters, and the way that they move through time is interesting too. That they don't keep focusing on them as a younger age. We see them grow up as characters, and we see how the things that relate to their own history and developments along the way happen. That there's interesting hints of future predictions and stuff like that they're always trying to work through, and the precognition abilities and how they work and all the other Esper abilities are really neat. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I'd recommend 600 points. Because you're going to be probably top tier Espers. Probably, maybe well-trained rank 5s, rank 6 is going to be up to you. Because the children are rank 7, we're not going that far for power. We're toning it back a little bit. But anyway, you're going to be a group that basically is working together as a special unit within Babel. That's going to be your characters. They're going to take care of all the normal things that Babel would take care of, taking care of dealing with certain natural disasters and problems along those way, stopping Esper villains, basically all the problems that exist out there that Espers might be called upon to, they'll be taking care of it. And you can keep it very episode of the week. You could also deal with some of the tension between normals and Espers, those that don't have powers and those that have powers. You could deal with Esper organizations or criminal organizations like Pander, who's Esper first, or those that would exploit Espers and basically use them for dark purposes or for money-making purposes and try to stop them. So you could easily bring in some of the evil organizations from the manga/anime or come up with ones on your own that your players will have to deal with. That's not a bad antagonist to come about that's causing some of the problems that are out there in sort of the shadows background until they come to the forefront to compete with them. And you could bring in characters from the anime. The fact is, you do not need to focus actually on Babel. You could go to another country and have another version of Babel from that country, that you could make it up. As long as it's, a country that it feels like they would have something similar to that, you could. America has their own group. Well, this world's version of America, which is a little different. And there are other countries that might have similar groups to them. You're going to have to figure out how you want to build it exactly, but you do have options if you want to. You don't have to strictly stick to Japan and its setting. You could. Now, the final one I want to talk about today it was a classic. I want to talk about Cardcaptor Sakura. So Cardcaptor Sakura, we focus on Sakura, who's a young elementary school student who basically is just going through life, living with her father and her brother. And one day, she managed to come across a secret area within her house where she accidentally unleashes this book of magic cards, and they scatter and go free. This room sealed by a sorcerer basically had sealed away these special cards, the Cloud cards, each with their own unique special powers that could physically manifest in the real world. She then meets the guardian of the Cloud cards, Cerberus, who was asleep on his job, and he says she has an affinity with the book that they were sealed in. She can gain magical powers which she can use to capture and seal away these cards. So she begins her adventures of basically trying to assemble these cards, dealing with others that can sense their release and are trying to go for them too. She's accompanied by Cerberus, who is a mentor and friend to her. Her best friend basically then begins to record her adventures and provide her with battle costumes, superhero costumes, which are magical girl costumes, except she can change them every week. So she's not actually transforming magical girl, she just has a magic staff which she uses. She just gets the outfits of a magical girl. And so the adventures continue, and as the series go on, we deal with the legacy of the creator of the cards, some of the things going on with that, the other characters that assist there, at least some guardians, other threats that do exist as things develop along the way. And of course, there is both a manga and the anime to this. And if you really love this series, there is a current manga sequel that has been out, set a little in the future after she's gathered all the cards and made them all hers, and there's a lot more to that, and it's set into the future from where both the anime and the manga leave off. Now, the genres for this one, magical girl to start out with. She's technically got magical powers, she's got her magical staff, and after that she doesn't have a magical girl transformation. She actually transforms into costumes by changing into them. It's a simple, that's a really simple concept. So it is magical girl, but not the traditional magical girl, which is actually a really interesting aspect of it. She has those costumes, but she changes them every time. One of those little weird aspects of magical girl that it makes it that there's a little bit of comedy to it, because you know you're kind of laughing to yourself a bit of like parroting those that would transform into it. Subtle jab. I would in a way call it a romance though, because she has feelings for a character that's the best friend of her older brother, but also then she ends up having a relationship with some of the other characters, including the one boy who's related to the sorcerer who created the cards on the sorcerer's mother's side, and they sort of develop a relationship in a way over the course of the series, so there is this kind of romance level to it. It never quite hits you over the head. It's always very subtle and interesting the way they do it, but there are other relationships between some of the characters which are interesting. That's the way to say the least of it. They don't go for traditional or well-accepted relationships all the time. We're going to say that. I won't dive into details about that, but there are always relationships there. The manga kind of opens up a lot more than the anime. That's also another interesting part of it. But it's also then fantasy. Magical powers. Strange, cards which manifest themselves physically into the world as kind of beings that exist out there. Now this one is definitely a classic, and 5 is the rating for it. If you like anything about Magical Girl, you'll love this one. If you're interested in something that is not as hit you over the head Magical Girl, this is one for you also. It has just a lot of cuteness and good feeling to it. That's a great way of saying it. Cuteness, good feeling. You're just going to be like, I feel good about this. So, if you're using this in a BESM game, 300 points. You're going to make your group a group of young magic users. Young magical girls, magical users. And the fact is, you will be gathering something. Maybe the Clo cards, maybe another object of your Game Master's creation. Regardless, you'll be gathering them probably for your own reasons. You'll be working together because you always have to work together, but you might have your own reasons. You might be similar to how the series went, gathering your own, at least to begin with. You might have one character end up with all of them. You might have them each end up with their own ones, depending on how you want to break down the existence of it. That's why I almost suggest coming up with your own, basically, MacGuffin in this case, just because you may want to have your characters each stay with their own cards as they earn them. And almost that's going to make it that you can divide up their cards equally among your characters. And, keep it simple like that, basically having them able to unlock each of their own powers and sort of then decide in a way, maybe not randomly, but through the actions in the story, who ends up with them. You might deal with magical beasts, protectors, the legacy of how these items were created, others that might be beyond your group competing for them, and other storylines based around once they would assemble them, you could easily create other storylines. Maybe those that might come to steal them, they're evolving their own powers and making them stronger, things like that you could easily have this going on for quite a while and quite an interesting set of situations. And you don't need to focus on the same age group. You could age it up a little bit. I would recommend you go for those people that are younger still. At most, you could probably put people in high school and still fit in this sort of genre, but that would probably be the limit. It also depends on what you feel comfortable with running. So, there you go. But that's it for today. So, I introduced you to 4 more anime. 2 ones from 2014 and 2 again, I feel a little more classics. Each of these, you of course could use in BESM with the suggestions I gave you. But as I've always said, any role-playing game that you want to adapt the rules of character creation to, the suggestions for setting it up work just the same. And character creation is really the problem you have to focus on when it comes to making these characters. That's it. Beyond that, you could throw it wherever. I've just focused on BESM because it's a system which is very open-ended and easy for that. And all of these animes are good. They're good ones, which I recommend watching too. Because watching will help you to, of course, run your games. They really do. If you really want to run it effectively, you should see it. At least see some of it. Get an idea of it. Get an idea, learn about it. Some series are easier to watch than others. I will agree to that. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you could always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there help to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.